Did someone say fantasy? Get ready for another episode of Fantasy Football RPG with Mike and Evan. Let's get into the action.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is episode 99 of the Fantasy Football RPG podcast. We are over the moon because not only is Evan here, which I'm always over the moon when I see Evan, but we have a very special guest this week, Garrett Price from Dynasty Nerds. Garrett, thank you so much for joining us. Tell the people who you are, what you're working on. I mean, they should already know, but give them a little heads up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm Garrett. You can find me on Twitter at Dynasty Price. I'm one of the podcast hosts and co-owners of Dynasty Nerds. We dig deep into all things Dynasty, as I'm sure these guys do a great job of as well. So yeah, you can find all my stuff over there.
Yeah, fun little anecdote. The first Dynasty podcast I ever listened to was Dynasty Nerds on my way to work. I was like, I've always heard about this. Let me see what this is. And I got the bug, I got bit, and now here I am hosting my own podcast. So I appreciate you.
I love it, man. What year was that?
2020. So
okay.
Right. Yeah. COVID was smacking, and I was like, fantasy football is kind of, you win enough home leagues and family leagues and stuff like that. You're like, let me get a little harder. And then
step it up a little bit.
Took over an orphan with Ryan Tannehill and Jameis Winston as the quarterback. So that was quite the project, but just excited for the community, excited for the space. Without diving too deep into Dynasty, because we're going to do that the rest of the day, redraft leagues are about to kick off. So if you are looking for a way to spice up your redraft league, head over to Trophy Smack, get a custom belt, custom ring, custom whatever, and use code FFRPG at checkout. Get a little money off, send a little back to Evan so he can get a new microphone. That would be great. And another little note before we dive into it, we are going to launch a listener-only Devi League. So if you are trying to get in with Evan and take all of his money, it'll be called RPG Apprentice. DM me on Twitter at FFMikeCash. Without further ado.
And now it's time for news and notes.
All right, Christian McCaffrey strained his calf. He has a history of that. He is supposed to be ready for week 1. Garrett, does this impact any dynasty valuation for him at all?
No. I mean, maybe slightly redraft, but I would guess he's going to be back week 1. If not, he'll be back by week 2 or 3. So, no, it doesn't really change anything for me.
Yep. He's the kind of guy that the touchdown betting line is going to be minus money for him to score a touchdown. So I'm not too worried about it. Puka Nacua, this is actually important because he's only played double-digit games twice since college. He went down with a knee injury. He's considered week to week. It's not supposed to be serious. Evan, is this a buy window or is this a sign of things to come?
I think it's a sell window for any Cooper Kupp shares. Crazy enough, because people are overvaluing Cooper Kupp, in my opinion, right now with the Nacua injury, and it's rocketing him up. A bunch of underdog drafts. I've been seeing him go a lot sooner than his ADP was and where he was previously going.
Garrett, what would you buy Cooper Kupp in Dynasty right now?
I mean, obviously, you got to be a contender if you're going to go after a Cooper Kupp. But if you're in that kind of mode, I'd be willing to probably give an early second. That's probably the most I'd be willing to give. It'd be hard. I'd be hard pressed to give up a first.
Yeah, especially with how loaded the class is next year. Running back, there's going to be a couple of quarterbacks that gas some people up, and then there's 2 or 3 wide receivers we're hot and bothered about. But speaking of an early second, Fantasy Calc, thank you very much for partnering with us. Josh Downs had a high ankle sprain. According to Fantasy Calc's price check, as of today, he's about in line with the 2024 203. If you're in one of those leagues that hasn't done your rookie drafts yet, Evan, is that high, low, or just right?
I mean, considering the play calling in the offense, really love that. Considering the upside with Anthony Richardson and being able to kind of spread the ball around, Pittman should still eat. I mean, I think we're all expecting that after the contract, so definitely see that happening. Definitely see with the offensive line being able to protect Richardson for an entire season. I mean, it's a dang good offensive line, so absolutely love seeing that, seeing the play calling, scheming up players. I think it's the right price.
Okay. Garrett, do you disagree or 203? Probably just about right.
Is it super flex or 1 QB?
That is super flex. So you're looking at the Trey Benson, Lad McConkey range?
Yeah, I think for me, I'd rather the 203 because I am Benson was the specific name that I was looking at. And even if it falls to Ricky Pearsall or a guy like that, you see some of the quarterbacks, Penix, Bo Nix, like most of those guys I'd rather have above Josh Downs. Nothing against Downs. I think Downs is a really talented player, and I think he could do well in this offense. But Benson's the one guy that I specifically have in mind there. When we get the opportunity for him to take over, we see traditionally the Cardinals let that guy just go. Like he's the guy. And I think Benson has that 3-down capability to just be a monster in fantasy.
Yep. 2025, Benson to the moon. 2024, unofficial depth charts have released. Does anybody care?
Nah.
All right. And last but not least, Brandon Ayuk. There's some trade smoke going on. I mean, we can put our way to it. We cannot. If he goes to Pittsburgh, this is just my thoughts. His value goes down because there's not a volume passer or a quality passer there. Does anybody disagree with that take? Or Brandon Ayuk, he's good at football. He just might not be as good for fantasy somewhere else.
No, I don't disagree with that at all. I think that's an accurate statement. I think the biggest thing there would be maybe a slight bump for the quarterbacks and a slight bump down for George Pickens.
That would make me very sad because I've been the resident George Pickens stan, as evidenced by all of the Steelers gear behind me. But without further ado, let's get into the important parts.
Let's get into the meat and potatoes.
All right, bear with us. So this is ordered by the ESPN Power Index. If you have a favorite SEC team and you're mad about where they're ranked, don't take it up with me. Take it up with ESPN. We're going to go team by team, position by position, and really make sure that we find who dynasty managers should be watching if they want to make their own rookie evaluations. We're going to start with the granddaddy of the SEC, Georgia. Rumor on the street is they're pretty good, but Carson Beck, we've had a history where their quarterback has kind of been along for the ride, not driving the ride. On NFL mock draft database, where they take all mock drafts that have already occurred, Carson Beck is the consensus #1 right now. Evan, what is Carson Beck, and what is he going to do for our fantasy teams if we draft him in Dynasty?
Yeah, Carson Beck's a cerebral passer, high IQ type of passer, in my opinion here, and he places the ball relatively well. So I definitely appreciate that. For me, he's the QB1 in the class right now. There's a lot of upside with other quarterbacks in this class, but I know what Carson Beck is. I know what I'm getting out of Carson Beck, and I really appreciate that. Good, not elite pass velocity. He can get the ball to all parts of the field. Anticipation throws, he can be able to lay it out there. And then the real only question that I have with him is handling pressure. Seeing him be able to adapt when the defense changes their look coming at him after the snap with some kind of pressure. That's one area that I really want to see growth in this coming season.
Yeah. A lot of great points there. Quarterbacks don't really have to deal with pressure at Georgia because it's Georgia. It's an offensive line factory. It's a running back factory. It's a wide receiver factory. When we talk about what Carson Beck can do for our fantasy teams, Garrett, in 2025 and 2026 and beyond, is he ever going to have the skill set to move into that QB1 territory? Is he the kind of the guy that he's a pocket passer? That's what he's good at. He doesn't really bring anything on the ground.
Yeah, we were actually just talking about him recently on one of the Dynasty Nerds episodes when we were doing, some of our college stuff. And he reminds me a lot of like a young Matt Ryan, which would line up pretty well with what Evan just said. So I think he does have the ability to be a very good NFL quarterback and a good fantasy quarterback. I just don't know if he's ever going to be a great fantasy quarterback. So, I think the ceiling is probably that quarterback 7, 8 type of range, with him probably sitting nicely. If things continue like they are, he'll probably be that kind of guy that's like right on the fringe of a QB1, QB2 a lot of his career, a la Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff. Like he'll live in that type of range.
Okay. I think we have a good picture of what Carson Beck is. So we got a lot of names to get through. Let's move to the running back in Georgia, Trevor Etienne. We already know about the Etienne bloodline, probably pretty okay at football. But he got a DUI this offseason. They're still trying to figure out if he's going to have a possible suspension or what's going on with that. Evan, what is the skill set that Etienne brings to the table, and how do you view him for Dynasty in 2025?
Yeah, so I think he kind of lacks a little bit of breakaway speed like his brother does, or like the Etienne bloodline has. And you see that. I think he most likely will end up being in a timeshare. So I don't think you're going to see the total workhorse type of profile that you would be expecting and what Etienne said that he was expecting when he was transferring from Florida over to Georgia. So that is a little bit of a concern that he's not able to take that lion's share. There's a lot of good running backs that I really like in that Georgia backfield for many years to come. Pass blocking, giant question mark for me with him. NFL teams love them some pass blocking running backs. So that's a big thing. He finishes his runs relatively good pad level. So I definitely liked that toughness between the tackles. I think he's more of a grinder though between the tackles than that breakaway speed.
He's definitely got the size and the physicality. I wish he had a little bit more burst at the like. That top end speed is definitely missing. Garrett, do you view Etienne in a different way, or is there anything else you want to say about Trevor?
Not too drastically different, no. As far as a pass catcher, he's a capable pass catcher. Not really a weapon in the receiving game, though. A guy that could use a little bit more in that area of his game. He's going to be a tricky one in this class because in a class full of so many good running backs, had he had been in this last year's class, we would have been talking about him as probably running back 5 or something like that. He would have probably been in that range. But in this class, he's going to have a hard time cracking the top 10. And so that's where it's going to get tricky for a guy like Trevor.
Yep. You talked about him maybe like not even being in the top 10. He still has a little bit of eligibility left. Do you think he could go back?
I wouldn't be surprised if he went back. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. His brother did, and his brother was going to be a top 3 or 4 back in the class. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if he went back as well.
Got to finish that degree. It's important. Right. Next up, we have wide receiver Dominic Levitt. He's a Missouri transfer. From what I've seen from him, he's probably best in the slot. He's got a bit of a slim frame. He's not super physical at the catch point. He does make a couple of wow plays that excite me. Garrett, is Levitt somebody that we should even have on our radars, or is he just another name in a Georgia offense?
Right now, he's not somebody that I am prioritizing necessarily, but you see it every year. There's guys that transfer to bigger schools, get a better opportunity to shine in a better offense with a better quarterback, things like that. And that's no shade on Brady Cook or anything, but Carson Beck is definitely a better quarterback. So he's going to have the opportunity to do more, but he doesn't strike me as somebody that is this incredible receiver. He's going to be a guy that's going to play across the middle of the field, line up in the slot. He's got good speed, but not amazing speed. He's got good hands, but nothing special. Like there's just nothing special about him. So he profiles likely as a day 3 guy and the 5th, 6th, 7th round that has a shot, but I'm not overly enthused about him at the moment.
Yeah, he could be a great real life wide receiver 3 for a team that if an injury happens or it's a good matchup for fantasy, we throw him in there on a desperation flex. But
sure,
I'm not actively pursuing him by any means. Let's talk about Oscar Delp. I mean, Georgia has been a tight end factory, and now we have Oscar. I'll be honest, I wasn't over the moon about him, but Evan, I want to hear your thoughts on what Oscar Delp could be.
Yeah, I mean, he's very athletic. He needs to improve his inline blocking. I definitely have major question marks when it comes to that, which I think will limit what he can do at the NFL level, which is a problem when you start thinking about draft capital. But what do you want from a fantasy tight end? You want a fantasy tight end that's going to be out there getting receptions, coming off the line, being pushed out wide. And honestly, he can play the outside. He can play big slot. He can be in line and be somewhat of a liability blocking, but he can come off in line to be able to get the matchups. So I definitely appreciate that. The talent is definitely there. It just sucks that he's been behind Bowers. And I mean, Darnell Washington before that, big wash.
We love
he doesn't have the college production that you would have expected to see. Although tight end historically, whenever we look at NFL profiles, hasn't had giant tight end profiles in college production. So it's not as easy of a correlator as it would be from the other positions.
Yep. Garrett, does Delp do anything that he's like a priority target for you in this class, or is he just another name on the Georgia offense that has so many good players?
Yeah, tight end's always an interesting one in college because you have guys that pretty early on are special. You see these guys, you knew pretty quickly Pat Fryermuth was going to be pretty good. You knew pretty early that Kyle Pitts was going to be pretty good. You knew pretty quick that Brock Bowers was going to be pretty good. Like, there's a lot of these guys, and then there's guys that sneak up on you, and you didn't necessarily see them coming all the way. I think that could potentially be Delp. He's got more of the traditional size. Like Brock Bowers, for as amazing as he was, the only thing he was lacking a little bit was that traditional size. Delp does have that. So when you add the athleticism with the size there, what I want to see is, I don't doubt that he can move well vertically, but how fluid is he? And that's really what I want to see out of him this year. Is he a fluid route runner? Is he a guy that's going to be able to pluck the football? Like, I want to see some of those nuanced things, because that'll get me a lot more excited about a Delp.
Yeah. Seeing somebody that can run in a straight line is great. Think about Daniel Bellinger, super great in a straight line. And then he got eaten alive by Theo Johnson in camp because he can't turn, which is probably a problem. That's enough Georgia talk for right now. Let's talk about the best team in the SEC. I have no bias towards this at all, but the new Texas Longhorns. We have Quinn Ewers at quarterback. My notes here real quick. Round 1 arm, round 4 decision-making. He can make every throw on the field. He can throw an ice cube through a sandstorm. Like, he can do all of the things you want him to do. Just sometimes it looks like he just forgot how to play quarterback. So
ice
he has
cube through a sand. Is that a thing?
I just made it up.
Never heard this saying.
It just came to my mind because I used strawberry through a battleship before, and I was like, what if you threw? But he would throw an ice cube through a sandstorm.
Be proud of that.
And
Rich
on the
Dotson
other
would
side,
be proud of that.
Show him this clip. But
I will.
That's awesome. Like, it would come out the other side. It'd still be cold because he's throwing it hard enough. But
there you go.
I just, with all of the question marks at quarterback around this class, like, Quinn Ewers could be a round 1 talent. Evan, do you think that he ends up going in the first round?
Oh, man.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah, right. I think he's going to be a desperation late round 1 quarterback play for some team.
Okay.
I do think that that's going to be the case. His arm slot is a little concerning, a little wonky to me. I'm not used to seeing where it comes out. And how the ball kind of flies based off of that is really interesting. I really appreciate that he reclassified. Garrett, you would know all about that going to Ohio State, you know.
Yep.
I really appreciate seeing that. The grit, the moxie that he has off of all of that. The Alabama hit that knocked him out of the game, that was pretty rough, you know, to watch back then. But yeah, I appreciate him. I think he gets a little lazy with his feet sometimes when I was watching.
Yes.
And I think that causes the ball to soar, causes him to not be able to drive the ball downfield. And I think he's been able to get away with having more arm talent than everybody else around him for so long that he relies on that arm talent too much, which gets him into trouble.
Completely fair. And I cannot be unbiased on this, so I'm just going to keep throwing it to you guys. Garrett, I'm going to ask you, this isn't a real question that people are going to be having, but hypothetically, Quinn Ewers right now, or what he could turn into next year, or Bo Nix, who was already the 12th overall pick in the draft, who would you rather be targeting for your dynasty teams?
This is a really tricky one for me, because I don't like Bo Nix. Like,
I don't think anybody does.
Matt O'Hara, for some reason, likes Bo Nix. I don't get it. He's
probably like Kenny Pickett too. Like,
maybe. So that's hard, because part of it is, you have a guy that's already been a first round pick, like secure in that, has a real shot to win the job right out of year 1. I just don't think he has an NFL arm. I'm not sure that he can make all the throws. And granted, Drew Brees didn't have the strongest arm ever, and Sean Payton was able to make it work. But you put him in a situation with poor receiving core, okay offensive line, like, I don't know. But then you give me Quinn Ewers on the other side, and it was physically painful at times to watch Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell tape.
Yes.
Because, like, they would be so open and just completely miss them. And I get what you guys are saying about the arm talent, because you saw other throws where you're like, wow, he just threw off platform there, put it on the spot. Like, wow, that was really impressive. And like, throwing deep outs 30 yards down the field. Like he can physically make all the throws, but the accuracy is just so inconsistent. One minute it's a dime, the next minute it's 30 feet over his head. And then you're right, the decision making is a little wonky as well. If he grew the mullet back, I think that would help.
That's fair. That's fair.
That would move him up, at least 15 spots for me.
Considerably.
But no, you know what? At this point, I'll take the upside of Quinn Ewers and hope that he's able to, that he took this offseason seriously to really refine some of those things in his game, and that whatever coach he goes to is able to harness that raw ability.
Yeah. We have the discussion all the time. Like, would you rather have the Family Guy clip? Like, would you rather have the boat or the mystery box that could be a boat?
Right.
This isn't, it could be a boat. Like Quinn Ewers could be a boat. Bonex could be like,
could have a go-kart.
Bonex could be a Prius. Maybe if you're really lucky, if you're really, really lucky, he could be a mid QB2. That feels like we've exhausted the Quinn Ewers discussion, and he's going to be a fun prospect to watch. Whether you're a Texas fan or not, just watch the chaos unfold or see if he got better. At running back,
Mike, just real quick before we jump off here.
Yeah.
Do you think that the national exposure to Quinn Ewers is going to cause more people to fall in love with him in dynasty drafts because they've seen him on a top-ranked football team? And we get this all the time. We see the top-ranked football teams, the casual fans get in there, and they're like, I've seen this guy play. I've seen a primetime game.
Yep. I watched Stetson Bennett go 22nd overall because somebody said, I've seen him win a national championship. He must be good. Quinn Ewers, for a couple of reasons, and I was going to talk about this more with Isaiah Bond, the NCAA game releasing, as much as we want to pretend like it's not a thing, like that is going to impact people's perception. And Quinn Ewers is on the cover. Isaiah Bond has 99 speed in the game, and I've played it. If you just call slot fade and throw it to Isaiah Bond, it's a touchdown every play. If a player just does that and they don't watch a lot of college ball, or like maybe that they don't listen to podcasts like this and get like true dynasty takes, they're going to be like, oh, Quinn Ewers is good in the game. He must be good in real life. I'm drafting Quinn Ewers at the 108, even if he doesn't get first round draft capital. So I think it will inflate his value regardless, up 4 to 5, maybe even 10 spots if he's not a first round prospect. So yeah, great question. Love the Quinn Ewers discourse, but let's talk about the running backs of Texas. It's a running back factory. We've seen some great players come through there. Jaden Blue was supposed to be, the guy, but Baxter was going to steal a lot of the work. Baxter goes down with an injury. They've already said that he's probably not playing in 2024. Evan, you wrote the note that Jaden Blue's not going to get the draft capital. Now he gets a full season as the workhorse in an SEC offense. Is that going to impact not only dynasty managers' takes, but NFL scouts' takes? Do you think that Jaden Blue could shoot up draft boards?
I mean, if he takes the role and seizes it and shows why he should be the clear number one on this team, I mean, it's just, I haven't seen enough out of Jaden Blue in his time at Texas, given he's been behind great running backs.
Yeah.
Very good running backs. Maybe you can classify it that way, but most likely great running backs. So yeah, I really need to see more of Blue getting a heavy workload to see if he can be able to handle that, to see how he handles weight in games, being fatigued after getting a heavy workload, and how he's able to stay in that Texas heat, being able to stay all game long after not being asked to do that his entire career. But Baxter, man, that hurts so many underdog drafts for me, man.
Same.
I was so heavy on Baxter, like absolutely loved everything that I was seeing last year.
No, it's tough. Garrett, I know in my mind, you're the running back guru at Dynasty Nerds. Don't tell the other guys I said that, but how do you feel about Jaden Blue and what he is going to be in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, you never know what's going to happen when a guy that has his pedigree, he was a very highly sought after recruit. When those guys get that full workload, there are players, as silly as this sounds, there are players that are able to play differently with a full workload as opposed to just, 3 or 4 snaps here and there and just, spots here and there. Now, from what I've seen, and it's been extremely limited, partly just because he hasn't had a lot of run early on. But from what I've seen, he's not. For a guy that I think would profile better than he has, like I was surprised to see his weight at only 200 pounds. Like I'd like to see him bulk up. I'd like to see him be able to play with some more physicality, because I think that would really help his game quite a bit. I know that he can do a little bit of pass catching out of the backfield. So we're gonna have to wait and see. He's a bit of a wild card for me right now. I don't feel confident in what I've seen thus far, but it's such a small sample size that a lot could really change.
Yep. I think if he bulked up a little bit, it might hurt the top end speed, which we're all enamored with. But if he's listed at 200, he's probably 190, and he's probably going to bulk up to 195 for the draft, just to hopefully check a couple of boxes. Great comment. Anybody love Silas Bolden?
No.
All right.
Not really.
Cool. Sorry, Joseph. Appreciate you coming in, though, but no love for Silas Bolden. Let's talk about wide receiver Isaiah Bond. The name's Bond, Isaiah Bond. They're in the same way that we got frustrated watching Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell. I got more frustrated watching Jermaine Burton and Isaiah Bond, because holy smokes, Jalen Milroe could not hit the broadside of a barn last year. I hope that changes this year. We'll talk about him a little bit later. But super fast, super slim, can take the top off of a defense. Is he just going to be a deep threat at the next level, Evan, or are you looking for him to kind of evolve his game at Texas?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to see him evolve his game at Texas. He can run any route that's deep. Whatever you're trying to put in his hand, you can call multiple different routes there. But watching him in the limited amount of time there, it looked like he was able to find holes in the zone and be able to settle, which is definitely a good sign moving forward, that he can be used in multiple different ways within offenses. So really appreciate that. Like you said, one of the fastest players in college football, period. Yeah. I really think Barryon Brown is incredibly fast as well. We'll talk about him later. And I can't wait to see the race between the two of them to see who's going to have one of the fastest 40 times for wide receivers this year.
Yep. Neither are touching Xavier Worthy, though. Great comment from Michael from Dynasty Dogs. Bond does have some snap in his routes. Like, I just don't think he got to showcase it that much at Alabama, because he would run and in and like leave the defender in the dust. And then Milroe would just run, because he's Milroe and he's the best athlete on the field most of the time. But Garrett, are there any things that you're looking for in Isaiah Bond in 2024 so that he can be a better prospect in 2025? Or do you think he's already a pretty complete day one or day two receiver?
I would be, with that speed, he could definitely sneak into round one. He seems more like a day two guy to me at the moment, but we'll see how he does this year. Definitely a guy that has, we've mentioned it, crazy like deep speed. What I would like to see is how well that he can do things after the catch. Like I want to see some more, catching the ball and then be able to make a guy miss in a short area. Because you see the short area quickness in his routes, but I haven't seen it as much in the open field. And so I'm guessing if it's in his routes, he should be able to do it in the open field. I just haven't seen as much of it. And granted, limited opportunities at Alabama. So hopefully we get to see him showcased a little bit more at the next level. But yeah, he's electric. He's electric. So I'm excited to see what he does in Texas.
Fired up for Texas this year. Now let's move to their little brother, the Alabama Crimson Tide. We don't have any running backs to talk about because they're starting running backs a sophomore. Maybe we'll get into him if we have some Devy time at the end. Wide receivers, any of the starting three could theoretically jump into the conversation, but it's more likely that they return to school. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, pun intended, Jalen Milroe. Like, he's electric with the ball in his hands. He does have all sorts of arm strength. We just haven't seen him reel in any noticeable way at all. Evan, what are we looking for in Jalen Milroe in 2024? And like, could he be on the Jalen Hurts model, or is he just another athlete doing his best?
Mike, last year you talked about Joe Milton being the Lamborghini without a steering wheel. Jalen Milroe is a Lamborghini with a steering wheel sitting in the driver's seat.
They just doesn't use.
You just need to connect it.
Yep.
Like, everything is there for him to be able to succeed.
Yep.
And you just the passing consistency just hasn't been there. So it'll be really interesting to see the offense, how it evolves with obviously the new coaching change there. But you're absolutely right. I mean, he can throw a ball through the eye of a needle, like in velocity terms. He'll just find a way to fit it there. He can't throw it accurately. So
he couldn't hit the needle.
If you move the needle to where the ball is going, he could try and fit it through there. Definitely pushes the ball downfield. His escapability is next to none. I mean, what other quarterback in college football has the ability to escape the pocket, be able to run around for, a good 20 seconds in the backfield and still be able to launch the ball downfield for a hope and prayer?
I'll say it lightly under my breath, Shadur Sanders, but that's a little too spicy for today. Garrett, Jalen Milroe checks all of the boxes from a fantasy football perspective. From an NFL, like where they will draft him perspective, do you see him getting day 1 or day 2 capital unless he takes a major step forward, or does he need something more to be in that range?
I think he's got to do something else this year. He's got to take that next step forward. These guys now, granted, quarterbacks are getting pushed up more and more. So, like, would it shock me if a team was willing to do that? No, it wouldn't shock me. But for me, it's like he's got to take a step forward as a passer. To be able to project that at the next level is tough to do. And guys have done it. Like, we've seen a few guys that have been able to improve, but we can only comp so many guys to Josh Allen. Like, not every player is going to improve as drastically as a passer as he has. So, it's tough to do. I just find it funny. Like, if you're a quarterback and your name's Jalen, you're probably just going to be like a freak athlete because you got Jalen Hurts, you've got Milroe here, even Jalen Daniels from Kansas. Like, we're not going to cover him, but like, if you're named Jalen and you play quarterback, you're probably like a really good athlete.
Yep. Think about naming my firstborn son Jalen so he gets faster, if that ever happens.
Telling me there's a chance.
Yeah. All right. That's enough Alabama talk. If we have time, we'll get into some Devy stuff. Oklahoma, their quarterback's a sophomore. Their running back's a sophomore. They have one wide receiver senior transfer that we're not really fired up about. But let's talk about Deion Burks. Could be an early declare. Could check a lot of boxes. Evan, I haven't deep dove into Deion. Sell me on him. Tell me why I should be fired up about him.
I'm pretty sure he was on the freaks list, if I remember correctly here.
He was.
Hit above 22 miles per hour in GPS tracking last year, which tells you speed to burn, especially in-game speed. We love seeing the track speed, the underwear Olympics, as you want to call it, the scouting combine. But GPS speed, we want to see them do it in pads, on the field, tracks the ball relatively well on the deep balls, which I really appreciate. And that Oklahoma offense is going to take shots. With that wide receiver crew, you would be dumb not to take shots. So they're going to be a lot of fun to see them stress safeties and be able to push downfield. Obviously, with the frame, struggles against press, as typical for anybody of that size. And then I didn't really see a ton of what looked like football IQ to see zone coverage and know where he needs to go, how to sit, how to utilize that speed and not just run into the next zone. So that's something that I'm looking for him to be able to consider. Late day 3 type of prospect for me right now. Obviously could have a bigger season to be able to increase that. Hopefully. I think Oklahoma is going to struggle a little bit moving to the SEC this season. They're a young team. I think next year is going to be more so their season.
Completely fair. If anybody saw my face while I was muted, it's because I looked up the freaks list. Just real quick. He is 5'9", 190 pounds, but he squats 540. He benches 400 and he can power clean 340. I am 230 pounds and I cannot do any of those things. So props to him. That's amazing. Garrett, is this a priority name that we should be watching so we can see if he takes that step forward? Or is this somebody, once you see the stats begin to accumulate, then you'll turn your head a little bit more?
Yeah, more the latter.
Okay.
A guy that had a decent amount of drops last year as well. Player that, I love talking about guys that are small, but like play bigger. Like he doesn't. He plays small, which is surprising. Like with that, like that physicality from like in the weight room, like you'd think he'd play bigger and strong. Like he doesn't.
Yeah.
He doesn't. So yeah. Overall, like I'm not crazy high on him at the moment.
Okay. So if we could just take a little bit of like dog mentality and just put it into Deion Burks, that would fix everything.
That would help a lot because
all right.
I mean, as he's doing in the weight room, like let's find it in the field.
Yeah, love that. Let's move to the Tennessee Mickey Mouse offense at quarterback. We're all in love with Nico for 2026, but that's not what this podcast is about. Let's talk a little bit about Dylan Sampson.
Yeah.
Garrett, all right. Sell me on Dylan Sampson. Tell me why we should all be fired up.
Yeah, I'm not even sure I'm 100% fired up, but I really enjoy like watching him play.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Like for whatever reason, like sometimes you just have certain guys where you watch them, you're like, that guy's fun. And like that's how I feel about Sampson. Like, do I think he has the size to be able to be a legitimate NFL running back? I'm not sold that he does. But the dude is absolutely electric with the ball in his hands. Makes some big plays, breaks off long runs. And the as much as I'm giving him crap for that, like the NFL is much more open to that than they were in the past. Like they were much more willing to give guys that are a little bit undersized a shot than they've been in the past. So it's definitely like in the realm of possibility that he could make a difference for an NFL team. But he's another one now that like likely a day 3 guy. I think he's, I think he's a good pass catcher, but I don't know that he's going to ever be more than your scat back, your third down back.
Yeah. I just humble brag, just did a little scouting seminar with Lance Zierlein, and we did some like measurables that are non-negotiables for a lot of teams. Running backs, 5'11", 215, 4'5", 240. If they are not 5'11", 215, the BMI needs to like kind of match that, or they need to be elite somewhere else. Sampson like might have elite speed that would, let him get over that, but
he might.
We're going to need to see it at the combine or in some sort of testing first in order to really check that box. Otherwise, he's going to be relegated to a day 3 pick. And we all know what that does to dynasty value, unfortunately. He's fun. He's exciting. But also, the Tennessee offense is always fun and exciting because it's a different kind of offense. Evan, all-name team 2024, Squirrel White. I wrote here, it's like if Jalen Hyatt could make guys miss after the catch. But is he anything more than that? Or is he just another Tennessee, like, hey, you run really fast, catch the ball and see what you can do?
Yeah, no, to me, he's a priority UDFA. Looking into this season. Well, yeah, I know. He's got a great name, but he is so small. Like, I have so many concerns about the size. Obviously, being at the Tennessee offense, underdeveloped route tree, pretty standard for most of those wide receivers. Incredibly limited in the red zone. Don't think that he's the type of receiver that you're going to be putting those quick slants to. Not going to be boxing anybody out. So he needs to score on the big plays, which is also a concern. So that's another checkbox against him. So yeah, I mean, he's an elite speed, vertical speed, linear speed type of athlete. But everything there, I mean, I think he was over 23 miles per hour GPS last year on the tracking, which once again just proves he's got speed to burn. But if you can't use that speed because you're not on the team or you're not seeing the field, what good does that do?
I think I watched, if I remember right, the South Carolina, the Bama game, and the Georgia game to get ready for this. And I think I saw him run a route other than a screen or a deep ball twice. And they were both slants on off coverage. So he's going to need some work. But for fantasy teams, the name might be worth it alone. It's like drafting,
100%.
Tank Bigsby, Tank Dell. You could name your hunting for squirrels. What more do you need? That's enough. But Tennessee, it seems like there's a couple of guys that like could be round 3, round 4 dynasty picks for us, but unless they take a serious step forward or hit the weight room like crazy, we're not super fired up about it. Let's talk about Missouri.
Real quick though. I will say Cooper Mays, their center for Tennessee, for whatever reason, has this
you and your offensive line.
He has this crazy ability that he's just projected the guys that have come out that nobody's been thinking about to be the next star coming out of Tennessee. And he says Samson is that next guy. Do I believe that? Do I think this is some Tennessee Rocky Top voodoo? Probably, but
could be
Rocky Top.
Tell me there's a chance.
Tell me there's a chance.
Move Samson on up. But let's talk about Missouri. Let's start at the top. Garrett, let's talk about your least favorite quarterback in the entire NCAA, Brady Cook. Tell us, what's he good at? What's he bad at? Is he even worth a dynasty sniff?
I poo-pooed him a little bit earlier. I feel a little bad now.
It's okay.
He's actually a decent athlete. He's got a little more speed than your average Joe at quarterback. So there's a path there because of that ability. The problem is I just don't think he has an NFL arm. He can do some decent things in the short area, but when you're looking at a guy to really be able to drive the ball down the field, I don't know that he's going to be able to be that guy at the next level. Now, you have a Luther Burden on your team, like give him opportunities to go and chuck it, like see what you can do. But my guess he's probably a perennial like backup type quarterback at the NFL level, day 3 guy for what we're seeing, which I feel like we've been saying that a lot. And even like as I was like looking through like my running backs list, like normally the SEC is full of really good running backs. That is not the case this year, which is really weird.
We got like
they're young. The running backs in the SEC are young.
Cal, Ohio State has 2 of them, which is pretty rude of them. Michigan, if you care about Donovan Edwards, we'll talk about that on our Big Ten. Are we doing a Big Ten? I think that's 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks from now.
But all right, running back, they have 2 transfers. I'm just going to throw these names out there. If either of you care about them, Marcus Carrell or Nate Knoll or Carroll. No? All right, cool. Luther Burden, probably 101, 102, 103 at worst in our dynasty drafts, unless something super crazy happens this year. I don't throw the Deebo Samuel comp around. I have made a meme about, Sheen from Jimmy Neutron. He's like, look, I've brought Ultra Lord. It's like, this is the 3rd time you've brought Ultra Lord. It's like, this is the 3rd time people have brought a Deebo Samuel comp. Luther Burden might actually have that skill set. He's dense, he's strong, he's good after the catch, but he also wins at the catch point like a regular receiver would. Evan, how high are you going to draft Luther Burden, and is there anything that he's bad at?
I have a top 5 grade on him right now, which tells me that he is probably the 1 or 2 wide receiver, because I do love me some Ted McMillan. So really love that. But honestly, with the way the quarterback class is shaping up right now, the question marks that are there, the relatively capped ceiling that you would say with Carson Beck, the most reasonably known prospect right now at the quarterback, somebody will pop at quarterback this year. It happens every single year. We see it all the time. So I would expect whoever of those quarterbacks end up popping, most likely to be 101 in most drafts. But I don't think there's any chance Burden slips outside of the top 3.
Completely fair. I'm going to throw it, Garrett. I know you could probably wax poetic about Luther Burden for a while, but let's talk a little bit about Theo Weiss. Is he rustling your jimmies at all, or is he just a guy?
Rustling you. I'm loving all these sayings. This is
I'm here
fantastic.
for you.
Please come up with a random saying every time.
All right.
But Weiss is an interesting guy. I like him a little more than I thought I would. He was a name that I wasn't super familiar with. So I had to do a little bit more digging on him. But you look at the size, 6'2". He's got a good frame. He's got really good hands. And he's like a really excellent jump ball guy. When you talk about a guy that's really able to high point, able to box out defenders, like he has that type of skill set that I think could be really solid in the NFL. And he's another guy that has good, like, straight line speed. Now, he's like the antithesis of Luther Burden in the sense of he's not a guy that's going to, like, make a bunch of moves strung together in the open field and
It's
like truck
that way.
defenders and like he's not going to do that kind of stuff. But I was pleasantly surprised. The only big knock that I had was I want him to do a little bit of better job against press coverage, getting off the line. Like his releases were a little cumbersome, a little long at times, but overall, like better than I thought he was going to be.
Yeah, completely fair. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, did you have any thoughts on his short route tree? Because trying to watch those routes, I was not as thrilled as I thought I would be for a former, if I remember correctly, 5-star recruit.
Yeah, he was a big time guy. I know he was like the number 4 or 5 player in his class. And he transferred from Oklahoma, right?
Yep.
If I remember correctly. Okay. I'm with you. I think he's, like I said, I think he's more of a straight line speed guy, a red zone threat. As far as like that quick twitch ability in the short area, I don't think he has that in his game. And so he is going to be a bit typecast, which I think is fine in the sense of the thing that he does really well is something that we want for fantasy, and that's catching touchdowns. So like, I think that helps, but you're right. Like, I don't see a path where there's certain players you're like, there's a path for him to develop into a monster. I don't see that type of path for him, but I do see a path of like now this guy's a little bit smaller, but like Jalen Polk. Like Jalen Polk does one thing really well, and that is go up and get the football and box defenders out. Like he does that excellent. Like I see that type of path for a guy like Weiss.
Because Jalen Polk has 19-inch hands. He's going up with absolute just dinner saucers.
Right.
All right, so that's enough on Mizzou. We got a bunch of teams to fly through, so let's start cooking a little bit. LSU, Garrett Nussmeier. I'm not over the moon. Does anybody think that he's worth a dynasty peak, or is he just the LSU quarterback and it'll be fun for college fantasy?
I think he's worth a peek personally.
Okay.
You know, I've liked the throws that I've seen. I've liked the way that they've talked about him coming out in fall camp from the spring game, looking at all of that, looking at him, especially in the Georgia game. I don't know if you've watched too much of that game, Mike, but looking at him under pressure, you know, I appreciated that. I think he has a relatively good football IQ. And if I remember, his dad is a former NFL quarterback and current quarterbacks coach in the NFL. And also in Brian Kelly, I trust. So in Brian Kelly, I trust.
His dad is Doug Nussmeier, who is a former NFL player, and he was 6'3", 211 and played for the Saints for 3 years.
Okay.
So
there you go.
Fun.
I like him a little bit too. That Wisconsin bowl game last year, he looked pretty good in that game. Put up nearly 400 yards in that one. From some of the scouting reports that I was looking into, they're talking about his arm, which I saw, and that was the only game I watched of him. So I have a 1 game sample size. But there didn't look like there were any throws that he couldn't make. So he's able to sling it all over the field. But you always have a little bit of a concern for a guy that's been around this long and has 1 college start to his name. Like that's not ideal. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah. Let's talk about wide receiver factory, LSU, Kyron Lacey. They have another dude built in a lab that has just showed up. He's not nearly the prospect that Neighbors was, but like maybe Garrett, talk to me a little bit like Brian Thomas range. Is he lower than that? Do you think he's even a first round pick? Like talk to me about what Kyron Lacey is good at and what he could be.
Yeah. So for Lacey, I'm not quite there yet where I'm going to put him in that same category. But he is a talented player. He was one of the ones where, you know, he had the opportunity this year to be the 3rd wide receiver in this group, and he put up decent numbers. He put up over 500 yards. He had like 6 or 7 touchdowns, if I remember correctly. So like he is a solid player overall. The thing that I'm not sure about it, like he tracks the ball pretty well and his routes are pretty nice, but there's something that I'm having a hard time putting my finger on. And he just didn't have to, he didn't seem like he had that my ball mentality, like that alpha mentality that you see out of other receivers. Like he didn't have that to me. And like, I don't know if that's entirely fair when you had these two other first round guys. Like maybe that shows up this year now that he's more of the leader of the group. But he just didn't have that to me. So we'll have to kind of wait and see on him. But I think, I mean, it's LSU. They develop receivers incredibly well. You can debate all day whether it's LSU or Ohio State that develops wide receivers better. But like, I'm never going to count out an LSU receiver. He just doesn't seem like that next guy to me, but maybe he will be.
Cool. They develop wide receivers well. I cannot name an LSU tight end that has come out in recent history that has enlightened me, but Evan, sell me on Mason Taylor.
I mean, Mason Taylor is the unsexy type of tight end. He's a possession tight end that sticky hands. He's going to make the plays over the middle. He's going to get absolutely lit up by a linebacker when he sits in the middle, and Nussmeier just chucks the ball to him, and he's going to get rocked. Former NFL bloodlines as well. Jason Taylor, and then Zach Thomas, I think, dad and uncle, respectively. So NFL teams love NFL bloodlines. They will give NFL bloodlines chances. Is he fast? No, not really. Is he a great route runner? No, not really. But he has sticky hands. He knows how to sit and be that possession type receiving tight end, and he can block.
Sell me on this tight end. He's slow, can't run routes, but he can catch the ball sometimes.
No, not sometimes. If it's in his general area, he's catching it.
All right, so 3 targets for 27 yards, but 2 touchdowns is his ceiling. Can't wait.
Not the kind of tight end you want for fantasy football. I will completely agree with that. I have a 7th round grade on him right now. I think he's definitely a back end day 3 player, mainly because of the bloodlines and the fact that he catches anything in his general area.
All right. Well, let's rock and roll on over to Texas A&M. We think Weigman's going to declare in 2026, although with how weak the 2025 class is, he could come out a little bit earlier. Any love there, or do we think he needs another year in the slow cooker to figure it out?
He got hurt way too early in the season. I don't think there's nearly enough tape to be able to fully evaluate him personally. I think this is a huge year, and that A&M wide receiver crew is an absolute mess. It may be worse than Penn State's, and I think Penn State's wide receivers are horrendous.
Yeah, but they have 2 good running backs and Nick Singleton.
And a whole tight end room of tight ends.
Fair. Garrett, any love for Weigman, or moving on to Levon Moss?
He is an interesting name. I don't hate Weigman. I think he is a talented quarterback, I think he's probably one of the odds-on favorites to be that guy that like breaks out just because of his natural ability. But it's like overall this quarterback class is like just not exciting. And he's another one of those players that's just not exciting. Like he's not a great athlete, so he's going to have to win with his arm. And, Evan Stewart, he transferred, and like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough for him.
Well, let's talk about Levon Moss then.
Okay.
Evan, what are your vibes around Levon Moss? Is he a 3-down back? Is he a scat back? Like, tell me, what is his best fit at the NFL level?
He is another running back in this class that is going to be a depth running back on a 53.
Cool.
Most likely a RB2 on an NFL team. I don't see him as a lead back on any NFL team. What I have written up on him is he's athletic with good agility and good acceleration with good short area quickness. None of those traits are elite.
So just a whole lot of good.
I had a hard time like tracking down like what size he was, because like one place I would look, it was like 185, and I'm like, ew. And then the next place I'd look, he's like 210, and then the next place is like 200, and like the weight was all over the map with him. So that was something that I was trying to figure out, because if he's moving like he is at 210 pounds, I'm interested. But if he's moving at 185, like that's what you would expect him to do. So that's what I like. I need a solid weight on this guy, and then I'll know how I feel.
Yeah. Well, if there's one thing we know about colleges, it's how much they're just completely transparent with height and weight.
Absolutely.
Xavier Legette is 6'4", 240, and he runs a 4.24 40-yard dash. All right, let's move on to Ole Miss. I'm just going to give my wave tops on Jackson Dart. Thought he was fine. I thought he was medium. I thought he could maybe keep an NFL offense on schedule if the receivers are open. He lacks the arm talent. He lacks the athleticism. But he was like an okay decision maker, which Ole Miss makes it easy for you. So given the toot sounds, we will just move on from Jackson Dart. Let's talk about Trey Harris. Evan, sell me on Trey Harris.
I mean, Trey Harris is your prototypical outside wide receiver. He's got the size, he's got the speed, exceptional catch radius. You look at balls and you're just like, how did he get to that ball? How does his hands reach out that far? Uses his frame incredibly well, in my opinion, to block out defenders. And he tracks the ball very well on intermediate and deep passes, which Ole Miss loves to take shots. We love to see those deep routes from Ole Miss. So I think that's really good. Pretty strong release from what I saw to be able to take his size. Lacks the true elite speed, but has enough juice to be able to get downfield, to be able to get on safeties and use his size to be able to box them out.
Enough juice.
I have a late second round grade on him.
Okay, we'll take that. We need to fly through these. So you said enough juice. Let's talk about Antoine Juice Wells Jr. Garrett, have you watched a lot of Antoine, or like, is he the kind of prospect that we should be excited about, or is he the wide receiver 2 for a college? So like maybe not that exciting for the NFL.
He's interesting, and he definitely fits like the Ole Miss type. Like, hey, we're just gonna like roid up our wide receivers and make them look like linebackers.
Yep.
Like that's the Ole Miss way. So he's like, he's one of those guys. The problem he's going to have potentially at the next level is his ability to be able to separate. I don't know if he's going to be able to separate well enough. But he's basically AJ Brown. If AJ Brown had to wear like a 50-pound like weight vest the whole time, like that's who he is.
Wow. Well, that's a great word picture, but doesn't get me really excited for him for Dynasty.
His hands are good. Like he's got really good hands. Like he'll make all the plays. He just doesn't have, like, for a guy called Juice, like he doesn't have the juice needed.
So he'll outmuscle DBs when given the ball. He'll box them out. He'll hip check him to get out of the way. You know, you look at him, he is scrappier than Juicy.
So he has the dog in him. So let's take the Juice nickname, give it to Trey Juice Harris, and let's say Antoine Dog in him Wells, and then problem solved.
Love it.
Auburn, Jarquez Hunter, real quick, my wave tops. I thought he had really good burst. Like I thought when he saw the hole and hit the hole, he could like immediately turn it on and get to his top end speed quickly. From seeing him run against other college athletes, like some of the games that I watched, they weren't going to be NFL players, but like he was still pulling away from a lot of guys. So I wish he went down a little less with some leg dives. Like there were times that people just dove at his ankles and he just went down a little too easy. Garrett, does Jarquez Hunter crack the top 10 in this class, or is he, day 3 pick that we're just taking a flyer on?
Yeah, he's going to have a hard time cracking the top 10, I think.
Yeah. Cool. All right, we got to keep flying. Florida, Eugene Wilson. We're not going to talk about the quarterback. He's not good. We're not going to talk about the running back. He's not good. Sorry to those guys. If you listen, we love you. Come on the show. But Eugene Wilson, Evan, day 1, day 2, day 3, UDFA. How do you feel?
Day 2. I feel pretty confidently that he's a day 2 wide receiver. Absolutely love his athletic profile. Absolutely love him as a playmaker. Absolutely love his quick twitch ability, making the tough catches. Every report out of Florida says that he bulked up this offseason, which would be huge for me if he has. Being able to put additional weight on that frame, especially if he can move very similar to how he moved previously. You look at Florida, they've had electric playmakers. You think back to Percy Harvin and Tony. We don't want to talk too much about Tony. We don't want to talk too much about Tony. We know how that's gone in the NFL. But in college, Tony was that electric playmaker.
Mm-hmm. Completely fair. Cool. He's electric. He plays in the SEC. We should all keep an eye on him. Let's talk about a downfall for a dynasty prospect. If he had declared in 2023 or 2024, we probably would have been a little more excited about him, but he had a really down year. Raheem Rocket Sanders. Garrett, what the heck do we do with Sanders? Like, is he looking for a bounce back? But even if he does bounce back, it's a way loaded class. Like, is he even a day 2 pick, hopefully, or is he just another guy that we used to be excited about?
You know, it's a bummer too, because like you see flashes and you're like, man, I would love to see this in a good offense. Like, what would this look like in a good offense? So he transfers to South Carolina? Like, what
Good
are we doing
offense.
here? Like, we go from Arkansas to South Carolina.
What an upgrade.
God, like, help your stock. Help your stock. Not like, so that's the frustrating part, is like he's moving to the same situation that we already had. Because when you look at like the size, I mean, dude, at like 230 pounds, 6 foot, like he's got the NFL size that you're like, yes, give me that. And like, he's going to probably run mid 4.4s. So like, he's got like the raw ability. Now, the issue I always had, and this is not necessarily something that you can at the next level assume he's going to improve on. I've always been a little bit worried about his vision. And part of that, I think, had to do with developing some bad habits because of the offensive line. Saw that at Cam Akers, same type of thing there, where dude's built in a lab, like everything's there, but sometimes those lines are just so bad and you develop some really bad habits. And I don't know that he's going to be able to fix that. And so that's why I wanted, like, if there was somebody to go to Georgia, I wanted it to be him, not necessarily ETN. Like, I would have loved to have seen, like, what does he look like with good offensive linemen in a good scheme? We're not going to get that. And that's going to be really hard for me to trust him at the next level.
There's rumors that he played last season at 245, which if he did is crazy that he bulked up that much. We're pushing. What? Yeah. We're pushing Ramondre Stevenson type levels at that point. So
it's a thick boy. All right. We're way over on time already, but you guys got like 10 minutes to talk about Kentucky, Arkansas, and then we can skip Mississippi State and Vanderbilt. Good?
Good.
All right. Kentucky, Barry and Brown.
Heartthrob. He's my heartthrob.
I'm in.
I love him. He plays special teams. He's an electric special teamer, which means that he's going to be on a 53. And with that speed, he, at the very least, will have designed routes for him. I have a 3rd round grade on him, which I have been told is a little high. Maybe it's not. But yeah, absolutely elite speed. We already touched on it. Him versus Bond in the 40 is going to be so much fun to watch. Yep. The lack of production at Kentucky is a little concerning for a lot of those analytical people. Yes. But once again, like I said, you see him on the punt returns, on the kick returns. You see what he can do in open field space, and you see how he can read all the people in front of him and how that all works. Love it. Absolutely love seeing him play.
I need to make a very big disclaimer here. So RPG leagues, a lot of them have kick return points, punt return points. So like for those leagues, I love Barry and Brown. I think he's exciting. Normal dynasty leagues, he's probably like better for a real offense than he is for our dynasty teams. Unless, Garrett, do you disagree? Do you think he's the kind of guy that can evolve in this season, or is he punt return guy that takes the top off of defense?
The biggest issue that I have with Brown, because he's a fun player, he's an electric player, but for me, like the biggest thing I'm looking for is ball skills. And right now he just doesn't have great ball skills. And that's my biggest concern. Do we see, like, how much time did he spend with the jugs machine this offseason? Like, was he taken out on dates on Friday night? Like, that's what I need to see on him, because like that's what's gonna be able to take him from an electric guy that we have to design plays for to a guy that, like, he's gonna go up and get the football. Because at 6'1", like, he's tall. I mean, he's got some size. He's very lean, which you'd like for him to add some weight. But that's the biggest concern for me, is just, does he have the necessary ball skills to really develop at the next level? Yeah.
Listed at 166, which if he's actually 6'1" and 166, that is very skinny. On the other side, we have Dane Key, who's listed at 6'3", 210, and allegedly runs somewhere in the 4.4, 4.5 range. I'll believe it when I see it. Evan, he profiles more as an X receiver, but is he going to be the X that we're excited about for fantasy, or is he like a sacrificial X like Matt Harmon talks about?
Yeah, I have a 4th round grade on him right now. Definitely appreciate it. He started as a true freshman, which is going to make the analytics guys go crazy.
Yep.
They're going to love seeing that.
That breakout age, baby.
Right? Yeah, that 4-star recruit. Soft hands, attacks the ball away from his body, uses his body once again well to block out defenders, which I appreciate. Top end speed isn't quite there, but that's why you have Barry and Brown in that offense, to be able to get downfield as fast as humanly possible. And I was a little surprised to see somebody that has been used so much to have a relatively small route tree from what I saw. Definitely looking for him to expand that this season at Kentucky.
Completely fair. I agree with you completely. I wish that I could like say something and like be like, oh, let's fight about Dane Key, but I don't have strong feelings about him. I think that he's could be a great backup wide receiver in the NFL. And that's a fine role. Last but not least, let's talk about Arkansas. Disclaimer for the Mississippi State and Vanderbilt folks. We couldn't find anybody to be excited about unless Garrett, is there anybody from either of those teams that you want to talk about?
No, and I don't even know much about this the next guy we're going to talk about either, to be honest. Like, he was one of those names where I was like, I gotta do some homework on this guy because I haven't seen any tape. I know nothing about this guy.
All right, Evan, I'm going to tee it up for you.
Straws. Yeah, it's grasping at straws to try and find an Arkansas player. Transferred from Utah, was a former quarterback that converted to running back, so he's incredibly raw as a running back.
Great.
Yeah, it's priority UDFA is how I have him listed right now.
Okay.
But like I said, I was grasping at straws trying to find somebody from Arkansas. Pass protection, major concern with his technique. He tries. He tries to get in the way. He's willing. Mainly a fit in zone. From what I've seen, it seems to be able to get a zone block, be able to have that down a little bit better. Mainly because I don't think that he is a great lateral quickness type of back. So being able to see it and see how it's forming and then be able to hit it in those gaps there. But yeah, like I said, former quarterback, so he's converting to running back, converted last season to running back. Don't really have any strong opinions on him though. Garrett?
No, like I said, that was one of the names where I was like, I know nothing about this guy. I've seen zero tape on this guy, like no clue. So your evaluation sounds great.
We believe you.
You need something about Arkansas to get you a little hot and bothered, right? And that's not even hot and bothered. That's literally just a name on the team that you're like, oh, I've heard that name before.
I miss KJ Jefferson. But
all right, and the corpse of Rocket Sanders.
Oof. Well, we've already run over time. Evan, thank you for bringing all of your podcast stuff to the beach with you. Garrett, thank you so much for coming on. Do you want to let the people know one more time where to find you, what you're working on, and just your vibes?
Yeah. You can find me on Twitter at Dynasty Price. All of my work, everything I do is with Dynasty Nerds and dynastynerds.com. We are getting ready for the season. So all of the good things that go into that. Already starting the scouting process for Nerd Score for 2024. And we're going to be rolling out something called Nerd Score Plus that I'm excited about here very soon.
Ooh, you want to give a little teaser for what it could be, or is that
copyright? A little tease. Basically, take what you love about the Nerd Score and everything it is as far as evaluating players independent from draft capital and all of that kind of stuff, and then marry it with stuff a lot of the analytics guys like draft capital, landing spot, college production, things all like that. It's like if those two things had a baby.
That sounds lovely. Can't wait to see it. Thank you again for coming on, and thank you to all of our listeners at home who have tuned in. We love you. I love you, Evan. Goodbye.